Got some more free agency news for the Detroit Lions, and that is that they are signing tight end Kenny Yeboah to a one-year deal. So let's get right into it. So we have some more free agency news, and the Lions have now filled another need, and this was kind of the tight end 3 position. Now, it does still offer flexibility that they can go draft a tight end if they want to, but they needed to add another tight end to this roster. Shane Zylstra was set to be a free agent, and you also have James Mitchell getting signed by the Carolina Panthers, so it was really just Sam Laporta and Brock Wright. And we like those two guys, but we needed to add some depth to that mix, and that's exactly what they did with the young tight end from the New York Jets, who spent his last 4 seasons with the New York Jets. I mean, this was an undrafted free agent coming out of Ole Miss that had a very productive final season. The first few seasons spent with Temple before transferring to join Lane Kiffin's team. Also invited to the Senior Bowl, but ultimately was an undrafted free agent that had over 500 yards receiving and over 19 yards per reception in his final season at Ole Miss. Now, this is a prospect that is 6'4", 250 pounds with over 34-inch arms. Brought a lot to the table athletically. His ability to build up long speed, his ability to have a massive catch radius and a very large frame that also allowed him to have success as a blocker, though there were some inconsistencies in line. We have seen some success with the New York Jets there, and also he's had a lot of success as a move blocker, as that's where he's had a lot of opportunities with the Jets and even going back to college. So the Lions here are adding a piece that may not be the most dynamic route runner and have the most looseness to open up the biggest and most diverse route tree, but definitely has a role that he can be successful in. It just, he hasn't had much production in the NFL. He's been a very capable special teams player that's been able to play on coverage teams. He's done a lot with kickoff coverage and also kickoff team. In terms of receiving production, we haven't really gotten much. This past season, maybe his most productive, 5 receptions on 8 targets, 47 yards, and he had a walk-in touchdown. That's essentially what his production, if anything, a little bit less than that. And there have been multiple games this past season, 3 games, in fact, where he only had 3 routes ran, yet he had 1 reception in each of those games. Kenny Yeboah, he's an interesting case study here. However, you can see, specifically for me as a blocker, why the Lions would be interested in this prospect. So let's get right into it. We'll start there first with his receiving ability, and that is the large frame that he possesses. I also think that he brings some body control to his game. We've seen this in his ability to open up catch and run opportunities, specifically as a seam threat. He kind of gives me some flashes of what James Mitchell could be, run after catch, that ability to get the ball in his hands and just take off, build up speed. And he has some of those capabilities as well. I got some vibes of that. And I think a huge part of that is that huge catch radius that he offers with his length, but then also on top of that, some of the body control to redirect at the catch point and continue to work after the catch because of that. He does have some success in his ability to drop weight at the top of the route. I don't think he has the most bend. You'll see this as a blocker as well, but he can drop his weight, kind of stop his momentum pretty well at the top of his route, snap it off. And I think he carries that with some plus body control when he's working into those sinks at the top of the route. It opens up some flexibility to win level 1 routes, open up some more complex route trees. Even though there's not a ton of shake or suddenness to his game, he can definitely kind of break down at the top of the route. We have seen that. He flips his hand technique pretty well. I think this is a big positive, is that when the ball is put on his chest, he can flip his hand technique overhand or underhand pretty naturally. That opens up some of that body control, but it also opens up his ability in terms of catch radius to flip his hands and redirect his hands pretty naturally to the catch point. He had drop issues going back to college, and I also saw him have a drop pass this past year. One, I don't think there's a ton of flexibility to just drop his weight, get on the ground, and scoop things up, save things off the turf, which definitely limits some of his catch radius in that sense to be super loose. But then he's also had some focus drop issues as well. Now, from what I see in the NFL, I thought that was better. I thought that he had a little bit of a focus to his game to make sure that he worked through the catch point. Also offers some pretty big hands at the catch point as well to kind of pluck passes, and he typically uses a consistent two-handed technique, which carries along with that. Now, as a blocker, this is where he stood out. In pass pro, first off, he plays with an entry that's really tight hands on entry in that first punch. That length starts to shine, especially when he gets to work on DBs. And this is where, as a move blocker, his background of being used as a wing player, used on the move as a blocker, really got the shine. He gets matched up with DBs. You could see him just outreach guys at the point of attack and be able to sustain as a blocker because some of that length that he also carried. But it also opened up a lot of success in line as well, and capability for success, because he wasn't just constantly outreached by defensive ends where he was on his heels all the time. He could kind of match up lengthwise, which gives him some uniqueness when being able to match up with Von Miller's as well. Even a Gregory Rousseau, who's incredibly long, we saw some sustainability there in line as a blocker because of some of that length that he carries. I think he's got a nice balanced base on entry specifically, which allows him to recover. When he does latch on, he does show some ability to work into the second level with sustain because he has a really strong latch on entry specifically that shows up on the move. He fights to reset his base. We've seen that against defensive ends. We talked about the build-up speed and also the special teams ability as well. Now, some of the knocks that I do have with him specifically, first off, would be the short area agility. This shows up as an inline player when maybe as a blocker when you're trying to kind of settle down. He used as a split zone blocker. You saw some success that had issues issues there in terms of redirecting with shifty edge rushers where he couldn't even always cleanly land a first punch. Again, I don't think he constantly plays with the lowest pad level either and the easiest bend to really sink himself down and gain connection and redirect in that way as well. So if he wasn't really connecting early and then being able to run, you could see some early losses that would show up and just not being able to place early entry. But then also as a receiving option, in line, kind of working through traffic felt a little bit sluggish. It felt like a little bit of a problem. And that also feels like a little bit of an issue as well to kind of expand some of the route tree as well. Ace in his feel for zone, I feel like his routes weren't always as detailed, and it felt like his routes didn't always work through and they kind of just floated at times, which led to some problems. But also I didn't feel like his spacing for feeling zone coverage was the best either in terms of like, where's the defender? Let me pull myself open. He did work towards the quarterback and try to make himself a good option for the quarterback, and he'd work late on plays for that and try to make himself a very wide target. But I didn't feel like he always had the best spacing for zone coverage either in terms of just kind of the natural feel of how to get himself open. Tight corners, we talked about that with split zone, could be a little bit of an issue as well. He's a little bit slow, I think, on his entry at times in terms of getting hands on first, right? Not being late to the party. That happened a little bit. I did like that he had some of the lateral quickness, though. That did shine when he ran behind on the front side to the outside zone. He would be able to connect with, okay, here's a blitzer on the edge. I could quickly laterally redirect here, get my feet out there, get my base out there, and then connect really quickly. So he's pretty adaptable immediately off the line. I just didn't feel like he always entered as quickly as he needed to with his first punch. Some of the discipline that he would showcase when pushing vertically, that seemed to hold in pretty long. He just wasn't the most sudden or loose or have a lot of shake at the top of the route from what I was able to gather outside of some of the body control that allowed him to get through complex routes specifically. He did show some of the movement skills and it opened up some variety in terms of scheme usage. He has success as a lead blocker. You could probably put him at fullback and find some success. His length plays into different matchup capabilities. And yeah, you can use him on wide zones because he's shown some of the lateral movement ability. So for me, I think the flexibility as a run blocker is super noticeable. The success, some of the sustain that he can showcase when he gets a clean latch, and also just his willingness to battle and stick his nose in against guys that are just he shouldn't win against defensive ends, and he does occasionally win there. So some polish probably needs to be cleaned up still, but ultimately it looked pretty good. There was a lot, I think, that you could buy into there with the upside. Same thing as a pass protector. Early losses could be an issue, but the man's feisty. He keeps a pretty balanced base, which allows him to recover and continue to work on plays. And then as a pass catcher, while there's probably some limitations in terms of route tree, as long as he's catching the ball consistently, there is some ability to build up speed and just be a threat vertically. Kenny Yeboah, to me, makes sense because we need the number 3 tight end. He's a young player, and the Lions are kind of going with a player that has a lot of the tools that gives you some things to be excited about to potentially compete for a roster spot this upcoming year. But I definitely don't think it makes it like, oh, now you can't draft a tight end. They definitely still can. They can still look for another one in free agency. It's just that free agency doesn't have a lot to offer in terms of proven production for tight ends, so this makes a ton of sense. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Brian, for watching, and I'm out.